we can start off with some very kind of very general comments and very broad outline. And then from there, we go into some aspects of that interactive bit. And it's good that when I had a chat with Akhil, we discussed some questions, and we now have a set of questions. So we could use that as a guide to go into into discussing several points that keep coming up in students' minds, and see if we can get some kind of an interaction going. What do you think? Is that
yes, that'll be amazing. Actually, it'll be very interactive, and I hope I'm pretty sure that all the participants, the students, they will enjoy having an interaction with you. So we'll go for the session first, and in between we can have the discussions and can again back to the session, sir. And Dr. Ish Sharma, sir, welcome to the session.
I'm so happy Ishji has joined us from Mauritius. Ishji, namaskar. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Last minute invitation, but we are all delighted you have joined us today because we want to hear from you many things about what is happening there in Mauritius and the kind of things you have in mind for the future.
Definitely, sir. So is it okay, sir, if shall I begin?
Please.
Okay,
thank you.
Sir. Thank you, sir. Learning is the beginning of wealth. Learning is the beginning of health. Learning is the beginning of spirituality. Having a heart to start learning is where the miracle process of all begins. Good evening, everyone. With great joy and immense pleasure, I extend my warm welcome to all the dignitaries, guests, and delegates present here for Dr. Sudhir Raj N Memorial Free Webinar Series organized by DIKSHA E-Learning in association with Ayurveda College, Coimbatore under the banner of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. In today's session, we'll be discussing about One Earth, One Health World Order, opportunities and challenges for globalization of Ayurveda and other Ayush system by none other than our very dear Professor Madan Thangavelu, sir. Now, before starting the session, I would like to go through a few of the basic instructions to be followed throughout the session. For an uninterrupted class session, use laptop with high-speed internet connection. Please make sure your microphone is on mute to have a disturbance-free session. In case of any disruption, please check your internet connection first. And if the problem is within our network connection, kindly raise the issue in the chat box. Filling your full name to be displayed is appreciated. Any questions can be raised or posted in the chat box. Questions raised in the chat box will be addressed at the end of the session. Now, for welcome address, I would like to invite Dr. Tulya Mohandas, Vice Principal, Ayurveda College, Coimbatore. Over to you, ma'am.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, one and all. It's my honor to welcome Dr. Madan Thangavelu, sir, in today's evening. I welcome, sir. I know in spite of your busy schedule, you have invested this time for us. Welcome, sir, for today's session. I welcome all the participants and the students who are gathered in today's session. Welcome, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, before handing over, let me take the privilege of introducing sir to this platform. Professor Madan Thangavelu, sir, is a genome biologist based in Cambridge. He has studied agriculture and has a bachelor's degree in agriculture and a master's in plant breeding and genetics both from Haryana Agriculture University. He is in North Indian state of Haryana. His recent engagements have included cancer genome analysis at the Department of Oncology, University of Cambridge, and the Medical Research Council's Cancer Cell Unit and Laboratory of Molecular Biology. He is General Secretary and Research Director at the European Ayurveda Association. Professor Madan was a Liverhome Foundation Research Fellow at the Medical Research Council Laboratory of Molecular Biology. He is the inventor of molecular copy counting technique to study aging, cancer, cardiovascular disease, etc. He is the General Secretary, board member, and Research Director of the European Ayurveda Association. Professor Madan is also the member of the team of experts under the Pandit Madan Mohan Mahali National Mission, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India. He is also the member of Mind Matter Unification Project at the Cambridge Laboratory, University of Cambridge, and the honorary adjunct professor at the University of Transdisciplinary Health Science and Technology, Bengaluru, India. With this, I would like to hand over the session to Sir. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lakshmi. Delight to be here with all of you, and delight to be here once again, second time around. I hope you can hear me clearly and you can see me clearly, first of all, before I go on. I've chosen this topic, One Earth, One Health, partly inspired by a request from our professor in Kotikal, Aparna Madam, and she wanted me to talk with the students and to engage with the set of questions that students studying Ayurveda and Ayush systems around India are faced with. Students have a set of questions that are on their mind, and students in Ayurveda in particular have additional questions on their mind. So we said we will come together and see if we can work through some of these issues that they have in their mind, but more importantly, to see if we can provide a larger context within which these questions sit. So in early discussions with Akhil here in the group, we said, why don't we gather some questions from the participants and students in advance so that we can use that as a guide to where we are going. So I'm going to take the liberty of just presenting some of those questions on the screen and see what is the mood among the students and what is the mood among the kind of things that people coming to study Ayurveda they have, and what are the, so that we can get a feel for the kind of doubts they have. Most of the students who come in to study Ayurveda come in because they unfortunately couldn't study something else, which is a very terrible thing to be in, because I'm of the opinion that Ayurveda is many of the principles and what happens in Ayurveda is in advance of what modern biology has. So something is missing there. The students who are coming in with a incomplete or incorrect impression of what Ayurveda has. So that's number one. And then they're challenged with language issues. They're challenged with concepts. The Ayurvedic concepts are sometimes very abstract for them because they've learned what I would call the easier science. And that troubles them a lot. And then as they go into the, as they start to feel comfortable and they go into their studies, they certainly are faced with a problem. What next? What do I do next? So I'm going to share the screen, which will give a list of the kind of questions that we've had here today in our in the context of this webinar, but also questions that are in minds of many other students around India who are studying. So I'm just going to play with this magnification a little bit. So it's one page of questions. There are about 10 or 12 different questions. Let us work through this, and then you will see what I mean by the larger canvas, the One Earth, One Health World Order canvas. And what are the opportunities, what are the challenges that are there, that students, if they start to understand in the bigger context of what the science of Ayurveda and the depth of what is there in Ayurveda, then they will start to appreciate better what is lying ahead for them and what they can do, and how they might want to prepare themselves for the future. So the questions received today, I've taken the liberty of highlighting certain keywords and phrases here. I'll read through the questions, take a minute or two, bear with me, but this is very important. So range of questions that go from job opportunities to research and to clinical methods, etc. So if I start with the first one, can they be a more suitable system to test and prove the principles of Ayurveda? So this is pointing towards the confusion that a lot of students have in their mind, having come generally from a science background. They come into Ayurveda and then they're saying, what are these principles, Tridosh Siddhant, Panchabhut Siddhant, all the tattvas, and then strange concepts, avarana, and concepts like this that don't make sense. So they're asking from that perspective, from the modern science perspective that they've studied till they come into Ayurveda college, they're asking, can we use some other way to test and prove the principles? The very common question that comes on afterwards, once they're coming to the end of their course, job opportunities. What do you do? This question about job opportunities and its many flavors and complexions you will see later on in this list. Effectiveness of Ayurveda and other Ayush systems. So through the lens of modern research. So you can see here, they're still thinking modern research, modern science, and they are still suspicious about whether Ayurvedic treatments and Ayush systems work. And how do we prove this? So there's a problem here because we know it works. And the students are slightly worried whether it works or not, and they want more proof. So there is a gap. Something has not been connected. The fact that it works and the fact that you may not need a lot of additional proof. There is evidence it works, but they're still doubting, why do we have to prove this? Do we have to prove this using modern research, et cetera, et cetera? Now, the third one, integrated research outside India and maybe even in India. How to approach for research grants, what are the possibilities to do PhDs, et cetera, et cetera. And universities, how do we apply to universities? These are very important questions, but these are things that students must have understood by now about the whole process of continuing their education. They are in university setting. Somebody should have guided them about how to identify their interests, look for opportunities, what is the approach you should use. So there is a gap there. For globalization of Ayurveda, which is our theme today, we should show the ability of Ayurvedic treatments to alter the natural course of disease. So earlier on, we said Ayurveda works, but somehow there is a suspicion that it's not working. How do we prove that it's working? It's a difficult set of mindset to change. And then the leading question from there is very important, that what kind of documentation must we have? That is important. I think this is missing. Maybe it's starting to get better. There are established hospitals, teaching institutions where that documentation is available. And that documentation is available. Bear with me. That documentation is available, and students should become familiar with that. What's the research? So, what's the research methodology required? And are there new strategies for research? That's a very important question. When we go into Ayurveda research, this question to me tells what is in the mind of many of the students. They are thinking more about clinical research when they talk about research methodology and new strategies and methodologies. Ayurveda is such a wide expanse. It will have within it basic research. It will have fundamental research. It will have literature research, research about how the system has evolved in different parts of the country, for instance. These are all aspects of that research. So we'll see if we can touch on that. Why Ayurveda and Ayurvedic medicines are considered as dietary supplements. And what are the changes that need to be brought to? This is a very important question, and that is a very unfortunate thing too, that in outside India, medicines are considered as dietary supplements. And this is something that is being discussed today in many areas in the trade discussions that are going on between India and the United Kingdom, or India and the European Union. And why is it being positioned as a dietary supplement? There are complications here because dietary supplements have certain standards. Medicines have certain standards. To convert something that is a medicine, what we are calling today as, or what the world recognizes as dietary supplement, into a medicine, there are a lot of regulatory steps. We'll come into that a little bit. Modern, are you there? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, let me continue. Modern concepts of pathology and Ayurveda concepts of disease manifestation are quite different. What steps are adopted to make Ayurveda concepts acceptable to the world? Now, number one, I am of the opinion that there is no difference between the modern concept of pathology and the Ayurvedic concepts. It seems there is some confusion here. We'll try and go into that a little bit. For me, there are no differences. It's just that it's a different way to look at pathogenesis. And within those perspectives, you will see Ayurvedic concepts, Tridosha concepts, Panjabhuta concepts, and all the other things that you learn about how you can get therapeutic response from simple interventions like Abhyanga, or therapeutic responses that come from complex procedures like Panchakarma. And you will see modern pathology concepts that can be used to explain some of these Ayurvedic concepts. What are the additional, now in terms, again, this is something to do with jobs, what are additional qualifications that are needed to clinical practice in other countries? Very difficult question to address. I'm happy that Professor Ish Sharma is here with us from Mauritius. He's our Ayush professor in Mauritius. He will be able to tell us, especially on that issue. Professor Ish Sharma has studied in India at several places. He has held various positions in universities in India, and he is also a practitioner, and he'll be able to guide us a little bit here. How can we revalidate and incorporate Ayurvedic concepts in other areas of the world like Africa and China? Ish Ji, who's here, again, will be able to touch a little bit on that African aspect because he looks after, from Mauritius, he's mandated to look after the 55 countries of Africa. And I will touch a little bit on that Chinese aspect. I have two books here with me. I'll quickly show you those two books. One is called The Medical Classic of the Yellow Emperor, a very old book that dates back to 350 BC or thereabouts. And I'll show you one or two sections there where you will see the parallels between Ayurveda concepts and the Chinese concepts, particularly Dravya Guna concepts, and the differences that are there between the Chinese system and the Indian system. What are the scope and opportunities for other than clinical practice globally? A very, very subtle question, but a very important question. We always think that Ayurveda, once you come and do a BAMS degree, and then you do an MD degree, your only option is to do clinical work. It's not the case. You can go on into so many other areas. You can go to do clinical research, basic research, and outside of research, you can go into working in companies, you can develop products, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many areas that are there. And the last question, what are the challenges in incorporating Ayurvedic concepts like Prakriti, Sattva, Sara, etc., in various fields of human development like personalized diet, personalized medicine too, online shopping, education, artificial intelligence, social media, marketing, etc., etc. There is a company running out of Bangalore called Swayam, and they have an assessment tool that I don't know if you are familiar with. So these are all things that the questions that came in from our participants. So Lakshmi, I'm going to stop here for a minute and see if there are any questions or whether we can take a few thoughts from Ish Ji in Mauritius.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. With your permission, I would like to welcome our special guest. Yes, indeed. Today we are glad to have a surprise guest with us, Professor Ish Sharma, Ayush Professor from Republic of Mauritius. Sir will give us some updates about the latest Ayush trends in Mauritius. So on behalf of Team Diksha and for Ayurveda College Coimbatore, I would like to extend my warm welcome to you, sir. Kindly request you to speak a few words about the updates of Ayush systems in Mauritius. Over to you,
Thank
sir.
you very much, the organizers, and big thank you thanks to you, Dr. Pawan sir, Dr. Madan sir. So maybe the questions are very interesting, and as Dr. Madanji went through, and we will take them up one by one, and there can be a nice interaction, and which all the students look up to. They want answers because these all are like in a way career oriented, like they want, like what would they be doing after graduation, or who would be employing them, what are the prospects. So they are very interesting questions, and before we take up those questions one by one, maybe later on in due course, as you rightly questioned me, what is the Ayurveda scope and scenario at Mauritius? I can surely update you about that. Ayurveda is recognized by an act, by a legislation act of Mauritius. We call it Act 37 of 1989. So since 1989, Ayurveda is approved over here, and there has been like a huge works by Dr. Mayaram Unial in the field of Dravya Guna, where he stayed here for like 3 years, and he went through all the plantation, and he compiled it very beautifully. Dr. Mayaram Unial is a legend from Dravya Guna. He was from Uttarakhand when he was working for Dravya Guna. So that's how. Then one prime minister of the country, Lady Fakim was a Muslim lady who compiled the medicinal plants of Mauritius. So she was a professor at the University of Mauritius. She was not from Ayurveda, but she had like very keen interest in the medicinal plants. So she has come up with a wonderful textbook that is worth referring. Now, Mauritius is a rare country where you will find Ayurveda doctors in the government job. It's a small country, as you very well could be knowing, like 40 kilometer by 50 kilometer, and having a population of just like 12 lakhs, 1.2 million. And it has got 8 doctors in the government jobs, 8 Ayurveda doctors. And there could be like equal more, like 8 more who could be in the private practice. Very interestingly, the medical and health facilities are totally free in Mauritius. The government of Mauritius is importing like 166 medicines from India, and the list contains gold preparations also, but everything is given free of cost to the patients. And from the small island country, there are like around 100,000, that is 1 lakh registered patients, 1 lakh registered patients with the Ayurveda doctors, and what they turn up annually. And Mauritius unfortunately has got a distinction of having 3 times the world average when it comes to non-communicable diseases, heart diseases, obesity, and diabetes, cancers. The Mauritian average is triple the world average. That is very shocking, and that is where I am the first Ayurveda chair in this country. The chair agreement was signed in the year 2018, and somehow no one could come up to 2021, and I happen to be the first person in Mauritius representing the government of India. Now what we are planning, a very ambitious project in front of me, is to introduce Ayurveda dietetics and lifestyle principles, Ayurveda Ahar Vihara, at the school level. I met the Honorable Vice Prime Minister, Madam, who happens to be the Education Minister as well, from primary to university higher education. She is the one education minister. She was very happy with the idea, and she suggested me, why not to select class 5th, 6th, and 7th. These 3 are called foundation years. So she suggested me, maybe you should be tapping these these levels, these syllabi, and I have had multiple meetings with the policymakers, and very soon we expect some Ayurveda topics to be in the Mauritian school syllabus, and that is how we can imagine if we catch them young. Then the kids bring the culture back to their home. They would go and tell their parents that, Papa, don't drink this Coca-Cola with your lunch. Mauritians are having a very bad reputation of consuming like 1 liter of Coke with every meal. No meal would be complete without a soft drink. They would be sitting with Sprite or whatever, 7-Up or Coca-Cola or Pepsi. It's a very common practice. So we want to catch the children young. They have to bring the information back, wisdom back to their homes, spread in their society. We will be educating the students about the medicinal garden for every home. It can be a vertical garden if they don't have land. It can be on a wall where they will be growing like the herbs, which are some vegetables and some basic spices, coriander, mint, and some maybe cucumber, and a few vegetables which are which can grow in a pot, and they will be growing their own vegetables and they consume it. So that is how they will be coming to know more about, they will be eating more healthy, they will be knowing more about Ayurveda herbs. So there are multiple things to, to be delivered over here. I have got a big responsibility, and I'm very thankful to Professor Madanji, who's so much guiding to me, and we fall back to him as and when we require any support. He's always there. And maybe with this much of picture upon Mauritian Ayurveda, I can conclude, or maybe I can take your questions if Diksha or Madanji, if you want to please add some value.
Thank you, Ishji. Thank you. You have, the reason why I thought it's important for you to be here with us is the few words you have shared today. I have one other question just for the students. Could you tell us a little bit more about recently the Prime Minister, last week, the Prime Minister of Mauritius was in India, and he was with Modi ji at the opening of the WHO Center. And he mentioned something about the hospital that's coming up, and maybe you can tell us. The students will love, everybody would love to hear a little more about the hospital that's coming and the interactions with Africa that you have in mind.
Yes. So both the prime ministers first met in 2015 when they discussed about Ayurveda. The Mauritian prime minister requested the Indian prime minister to bring Ayurveda to Mauritius in a big way. That was when in 2015 both the prime ministers agreed to have a big Ayurveda hospital and an Ayurveda college in Mauritius. And the government of India, being so generous, committed to 100% sponsor it. All the expenditure would be done by the government of India. And now, at the launch of a Global Center for Traditional Medicine at Jamnagar, which we all witnessed last week, the Mauritian Prime Minister was there, and in his speech he did mention that now we have Ayurveda chair in Mauritius, and that was regarding me being here. Followed by, he also went on to reaffirm a 50-bedded Ayurveda hospital coming up in Mauritius, which for which 10 acres of land has already been given to us. Like, we have visited the land, they have shown, okay, this is a place where the hospital would come up. It would have 50 beds. So it will be an OPD first. There would be 3 phases. An OPD first of all for 1 year, followed by a full-fledged hospital. And the third stage would be having a full-fledged Ayurveda college. And because Mauritius is a small country, we might not have 50 students every year coming to study BMS over here. That is where, as Dr. Madanji rightly put, we have to target the nearby countries in Africa. Some 5 to 6 countries in Africa like Zimbabwe, Ghana, Uganda, South Africa, they approve Ayurveda. So those 5 will be the first countries which would be sending Ayurveda students for BMS to Mauritius. And out of 58 countries, 25 countries in Africa have got some regulation upon some alternative medicine. Those will be our first target, to reach out to them. And from 5, we have to reach to 30. That is 30 countries in Africa should be approving Ayurveda through an act, as has been done by South Africa and Mauritius. So this is a very ambitious project, sir. And we are targeting, like the students from India are going to Ukraine, Russia, China, and Mauritius for MBBS. So some students might be coming from India to Mauritius to study Ayurveda as well. So this is a very ambitious project, and both the prime ministers have twice confirmed this thing, and we believe this will be in a very fast lane, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Ishji. Now, I hope you could get a feel, first-hand feel, and fresh news. This is very, very fresh news. The students will be listening to fresh news, and so wonderful, Ishji, you have given us an outline of what is being planned in Mauritius. Mauritius will become a center not only for tourism, as Ishji says. There are more tourists who visit Mauritius every year than the population of the island. And that will increase now when students start to come, when people start to come for treatments. And what we are seeing here is one of those first steps in that whole area of One Earth, One Health agenda. So you can see the early steps that are being taken. In Mauritius, Ayurveda is a recognized system of medicine. And we have an example of what the Indian government is doing there. And what can we expect, what we can expect, or what can be expected for students in the future who are interested in the clinical work or who want us to go and start to teach these things outside of India. Now, the second point I want to bring here is to draw in some more of those related themes of One Earth, One Health. Now, start with the philosophical aspect of One Earth, One Health. It comes from the state of Kerala and comes from the words and the thinking of Adi Shankara, who spent, as a young person, he recognized the importance of going beyond certain structures that were there. And if we look at some of Adi Shankara's thinking, you will see Advaita Vedanta, you will see the widest possible description of One Earth, One Health. When you start to drill it into details, I will take you into what is happening today in the world of veterinary sciences, and where there are traditions in India, in the south of India, where veterinary science is being used. And I'll take you through just a small set of images here. Please tell me if you can see my slides. Lakshmi, could you?
Yes, sir. Not yet, sir.
Not yet?
No, sir.
Okay, bear with me. Is it visible now?
No, sir. Screen sharing is not started.
Apologies. Okay, maybe now.
Yes, sir. Now your screen is visible.
Screen is visible. Okay, here we are. So for those who are not aware, today is the World Veterinary Day, and we are celebrating this as our program is started. They had already completed about half an hour of the program from the International Interdisciplinary Institute for Research, Education, and Skills. It's an online platform, and the theme for today's international conference is Ayurveda and veterinary care. As I said, today is the World Veterinary Day, and for those who are interested, they can see the recording on YouTube at the IRIS website. Just as I left the program, a very senior Vaidya, Dr. Rampal Somani, who was the former assistant drug controller of Ayush in Udaipur, was talking, and there were two other people to follow. When you go into this space, so this is an option for Ayurveda graduates. So one of the questions was, what else can we do? if we don't want to be involved in clinical Ayurveda research or with humans, I take you into a very old family in Kerala, and it's called the Pumuli family, and this is their traditional home, Pumuli Mana. And they are specialists in Hastya Ayurveda. And if you go to the website shown at the bottom of the link is provided at the bottom of the page, you will find all those videos where what they call this Aram Tampuran. Aram Tampuran is presumably the sixth in the lineage, who was a specialist in elephant Ayurveda. And his mastery of this and his understanding of Ayurveda, the basic principles and how it could be used for managing elephants and to keep them in good health, has all the principles that we see as we understand in Swastavrit and Dravyaguna and all the Tridosha principles, etc. So you can develop those kind of skills and you can see how to bring them to use. And in the discussions that are going on and that's known for people, here is one very important formulation that's been known for a very, very long time, particularly people in Rajasthan like Ishji, and people in that part of India know about it. It's called Himalayan Battisa. Battisa is 32 for those in Hindi. It's a Ayurvedic veterinary medicine or a formulation. And you can see the number of herbs. There are 32 herbs that are used in this formulation. And if you see at the bottom of that page, it talks about the dosages that are used for administration. Now, here is an example of where many formulations, many herbs that are used for humans can also be used for animals and is known traditionally to be used in animals for a long, long time. In Rajasthan in particular is a huge emphasis and tradition of over 2,500 years of using Ayurvedic formulations for managing horses. The cosmetics regulations, the drugs and cosmetics regulations of India, there are some revisions that are coming in there that will bring all these animal formulations, very large number, 61,600 or more formulations, plus variations, to be brought to the same standards as human formulations. So I want to stop here just to point towards that one word, one phrase, one health, with a concrete example here. So I've touched on elephants, I've touched on cattle, I've touched on horses. And when you look at the formulations that are used, you will see they are no different from what is used for humans. Now, let me give the floor to Ishji to see if he would like to comment on some of these things. Ishji, because I know you are originally from Rajasthan, you come from Jodhpur, you were born in Jodhpur. Please tell us a little more about that one point, whether you know a little more about the Himalayan Battisa and whether the aspects of horses and the idea here is to point our students to other possibilities. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Sir, all my life when I was a student through my school years, then whenever we visited the countryside, the villages, then we came across and we knew there are families who are known to treat animals only. And they would be making their own potions and their own concoctions, and various people like from all over would be bringing, because a veterinary doctor was like a rare entity over there. You might not find a veterinary doctor nearby, and you cannot take your buffalo like 50 kilometers or 100 kilometers. And Rajasthan is huge, like 350,000, 350,000 square kilometers. Yes. A huge districts which are big, like a district of Jaisalmer is bigger than many states. So that is where the families were reputed to treat, and for sure, the only lead they could be having can be none other than Ayurveda. So they were, and unknowingly, like they were not, surely they were not institutionally qualified. They did not know where did the information come from. It came to them from their forefathers. It was their like family kind of business or activity. And so surely we have got Ayurveda too pervasive to track its roots. You know, where did it start from? It started like it's like beyond anyone's memory or any record keeping. So it could be like, and we have seen many families, sir, who are applying Kakpad for the Sarpadamsh Chikitsa. They are very like, they are totally illiterate, and they are treating by putting a cross or like a cut overhead, and they are placing a piece of like flesh, animal flesh over there. Exactly what we find a mention as Kakpad Chikitsa in Agadha Tantra. There are many who are traditionally treating paralysis. There are families, sir, who are going for like Tail Bindu Pariksha and like Mutra Pariksha. They get your first urine in the morning. They just see it. They might put a drop of oil or not, and they give you a diagnosis. So surely there is like a huge to be unearthed, to be explored, and it will be very fascinating and very like promising. So surely the message we both would be trying to pass across over here would be to hang on, to have more conviction, to have like your Vani should be having that conviction, so that you can pass on the conviction to the listener, and that is how you can spread Ayurveda.
Ishji, I'm so happy you are here with me, because you are making my work very easy. You know. Now, before I take the floor back from you, could you tell all gathered here about Pushkar and the big festival that happens in Pushkar, the timeless festival that happens in Pushkar, please?
Yes, Pushkar is like most renowned for like some animal fairs where like their camel fair is very common, where people would be coming and would be selling their animals. And the camel is the main like animal which is being traded over there, and that also is a time where we'll be having like all the ancillary service industry would also be there. There would be stalls and there would be tents where they would be selling you various like medicines for animals, and various other like all other ancillary industry would be there. So I did not happen to go to that particular fair, sir, or I did not happen to go to like this a camel fair in Bikaner. And then we have got one like donkey fair also, sir, coming up like around Pushkar, sir. But somehow Pushkar not being like on my track, on my like nowhere. I very purposely I went to Pushkar twice in my life, but did not happen to visit it very regularly, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Ishju, what is important, we had in one of our events recently, we had the former Vice Chancellor of the Rajasthan Ayurveda University, and we were asking questions very much like the questions in the Word document that I had displayed. And he was also pointing to the traditions, you know, the very big traditions that are there and that are practiced even today in the villages, where there are no doctors and where they can still yield important effects. So I take that point just to bring us back to what is on the document. So I'm just going to display that document again so that we can refresh our minds on questions, and just so that we come back to the questions that came from our audience and people who are gathered here. Now, the question here is, how can we revalidate some of these Ayurvedic concepts? You've talked about principles that are there. We've touched a little bit on Ayurveda, the supplements that are used, not only for humans, but also in animals and the effects that they have. We've touched a little bit on evidence for altering the natural course of disease, whether it's animals or humans or aspects that provide very important benefits for people. Now, I would go a little bit into the area. I want to use one other example of the modern concept of pathology and Ayurvedic concepts, but I'm going to do that in two parts. So first one with an example that comes from a current example, still very much on the news. And let me see if I can share the story that G will know about it. The story is, as I said, it's very, very recent. Is my screen visible? No, not yet. It's very recent story. It's there it came out at the bear with me. Is my screen visible now? Okay.
Yes, sir, it's visible, sir.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Now, this is the story that I have. The story that may be familiar to most of you who are following the news, particularly the ongoings in Gujarat last week. You can read it. I'll read it out. This is it. On the left-hand side is a small news item from Nairobi News, and it's about this person named Rosemary Odinga. Rosemary Odinga was the daughter of one of the former prime ministers of Kenya, and Modi ji raised this point at the Ayush Summit, where he says how Ayurveda helped ex-Kenyan prime minister's daughter to regain eyesight. And the story from the Indian Express says that it has been a struggle since I lost my vision in 2017, 5 years ago. I've been into China, so this is partly related to the question about how it connects to China, but in this instance, in a slightly different way, and other countries, and underwent various treatment modalities like acupuncture. Nothing seemed to have helped, says Rosemary Odinga, daughter. However, she came to Kerala, she came to India, she came to Sridharyam, shown there on the right-hand side. The problem she had was optic nerve atrophy. And she was treated at Sridharyam, which is a very old family practice specialist working on eye health, Netra Chikitsa. And shown there on the right-hand side is a photograph of that appeared in the Express with Rosemary and the physician, Narayan Nambudiri, was the physician. Now, for me, this is exciting news, but it took me a little bit of work to find out what was the problem with Rosemary. And looking through several newspapers and whatever I could access from here, I gathered it was some form of optic nerve atrophy. This is an unusual condition, not too frequent, but it happens. And it's a very heterogeneous condition. Different people present with this problem. But what is amazing here is from 2017 to 2022, 5 years, Rosemary had limited vision. So that is clear. She knew she had limited vision. And what is also clear is that she went to many parts of the world trying to get this treated. And she came to Kerala and she was treated and her sight came back. Now, this is quite a touching story. If you then look around the world to see what is known about optic atrophy, you will see major centers like the Eye Center at the University of Michigan. And they talk about optic atrophy and the symptoms and what happens in terms of the anatomy. And when we go to treatment and drugs, this last bit on the right-hand side, bottom bit, it says, unfortunately, there is no effective treatment for optic atrophy. Once the nerve fiber and the optic nerve are lost, they never heal or grow back. However, early diagnosis and treatment of the underlying cause can help prevent further damage from the disease. Now, we have a problem here, and the problem is very simple. Here's a person who didn't have sight for 5 years or had diminishing sight, and she went to many parts of the world, and she's treated, and she gets her sight back. Would you accept that? I accept it. Now, the question then is, what is the basis for this treatment? What is it that Narayan Nambudiri used for treating Rosemary? This is the curiosity that I hope you, if there are students there, and if there are younger teachers there, this is what I hope you will find in stories like this, that curiosity to find out a little more about from somebody like Narayan Nambudiri, connecting with him, trying to find out what is the treatment that he used and what is it that we can learn from this treatment. So number one, the curiosity. Number two is a large center like the University of Michigan, their special eye center, just like Sridharyam. This is a big eye center in University of Michigan, who claimed that there is no effective treatment for optic atrophy. What is it that we can do here? So as a student, in answer to one of the questions about future research, this could be a research area, where you connect with the Kellogg Eye Center. You know the Ayurvedic terminology, you know what the treatments are. You open a dialogue between the Kellogg Eye Center and Sridharyam, and that could well become a PhD project. In terms of the mode of what is the pathology, how does it work? Here is the example taken from a paper, which are a few images, which I will show later on. This is a very special condition, a very special set of mutations that are known, and a very small subset of this heterogeneous condition, and what happens in pathology and how you lose your sight. I won't go into the details. There are a lot of details here, but shown in the top right hand are two structural formula for a compound called miconazole, and this is an antifungal compound. Now, curiosity got me to look at this paper. Curiosity got me to find out what is miconazole. The paper says that if you use miconazole early in the problem, at least in the model they have used, which is the rat model, the mouse model, you can get a reversion of pathology. So what would you then do? You would then perhaps want to have the curiosity and the patience and the skill to unpack this story. This is the kind of complexity that you would have to handle. For a lot of people who don't know how to look into Charaka Samhita to find out which section of the textbook to go, this image would look just like that. Each of these images is a whole story. Each of those images is pointing to different markers, different parts of the anatomy where things go wrong. So the complexity that is here is based on a language, the language of cells and staining with special markers to identify special cell types, is no different from the complexity that you have in a textbook like Charaka Samhita or Ashtanga Hridaya, which is presented in a very terse way. When you go further into understanding this complexity, which is easy for those who know the language. So for those who know Sanskrit, when they know the basic principles of Ayurveda, they can go in and understand Charaka Samhita. They know which section to go to understand optic atrophy, optic nerve atrophy. They can talk to Narayan Nambudiri and understand what he is doing and how this worked using the Ayurvedic language. If you then jump over to modern cell biology, you have teams working on these kind of problems. They can help you unpack that story. You can understand it, but your challenge is to be able to appreciate the language and the logic on the two sides. There is one other image I want to show you. This is even denser, and it talks about the pathology here of where problems begin. Now, the thought running through my mind is there something that Narayan Nambudiri used from Sridhariyam that works along these principles or not? I searched a little more to see how this molecule works. So this study, it talks about this antifungal compound, miconazole, and I'm saying this is an antifungal compound. What does it have to do with optic nerve revival? You can then, you go in and you read a little more, you will see a lot of aspects of cell biology that becomes clear. You will see how pathology begins with changes in the mitochondria. A very important clue. It talks about mitochondrial hypertrophy, and that itself is a very important clue. And then when you start to look at how this might work, you will see where you might have clues about how this fascinating treatment that is making a big story everywhere might have worked. So we've started with a story that is topical, that's there. It connects Africa to Ayurveda. Ishji is there in Mauritius. And there is something here, it's almost a textbook study. It's a wonderful case study that you can use to excite students. So I'm going to stop here and see if I can take a few more questions before I move on. Ishji, would you like to add something here? Or Sri Lakshmi, would you like to add something? Or if there are some comments from the students or people who are here with us, then I'm happy to address them. I can see questions here, how Vaidyas are practicing in Canada. Or Hema Shah joins us to ask this question, how are Vaidyas practicing in Canada or USA? I leave this, for the moment, I leave this with Ishji just to open up the story about how we can start to interface modern with the ancient, and why we must understand the language of the modern, as we saw there with cell biology, and the language of the Samhitas. If you don't understand these two, we cannot make the bridge. And that one question that came up in the chat in our early questions, which is the modern concept of pathology and the Ayurvedic concept, they never meet. Are they completely different things? All those kind of tensions remain within the minds of the students.
Okay, sir. Maybe just a passing remark upon how are they practicing in Canada or anywhere else. See, sir, Ayurveda is recognized in like around 20 countries the world over, where you can legally practice, you can prescribe, you can be registered as a medical practitioner, and you can sign a prescription. But otherwise, if you Google, if you just put like Ayurveda in New York or Ayurveda in Montreal or Ayurveda in Sydney, everywhere you would find so many people who might not be, or rather who are not BAMS, who are not as qualified as you are, and they never went through Ayurveda, but they are practicing Ayurveda. So this is surely something not very ethical, but how they are managing is they have got small associations where they have got their their own ethics. They never transgress from those ethics. They are very methodical as a team. When they are whenever there are associations, they are surely formed by, then you have to be a BMS at least, as we have got like APNA in North America, or NAMA, or like we have got AAA, like Australian Association of Ayurveda Physicians. Like there are so many, every country has got a one. And we having the European Union Ayurveda Association's president with us, then I surely should not be speaking much about it. But yes, what I have practiced, because I also practiced in Europe, many countries in Europe, what we were doing is we were seeing patients, and we ensured that, and we, maybe I should be using the word I was always there on a business visa, and informing the visa authorities that I am coming for the Ayurveda promotion, to talk about Ayurveda, to see Ayurveda patients, and everything was clear. We were paying tax in many European countries, especially Holland and Belgium. We had like what we call an NGO or a charity. We call it charity. So we had a bank account. We were seeing patients. We were charging money in the bank account, but we were ensuring, being very ethical. We never overpromised. We never went against the medical advices. That is how, if you are non-controversial, then you might like pull on. Madanji, please, you surely can refine it.
Thank you, Ishji, thank you. All the points you're talking about are very, very important. The question is very important. How do people practice in these places? There are, if you look at the case of just United States of America, the many 50 states, there are many states in America called the freedom states. I wish one of our earlier speakers in this platform, Dr. Baswati Bhattacharya, I wish Dr. Baswati was here because she would be the best person to talk about the freedom states. And in these freedom states, you can practice Ayurveda, but you must be qualified in that area. If you go to Australia and New Zealand, you can practice there, but you must be qualified. So you must have a qualification, and you must restrict your practice and use only what is available in that specialization, in that area, in that system of medicine that you're specialized in. When you go to Canada, you can practice in Canada, and that is possible. So I don't see there is a confusion there. The problem sometimes, again, I'm not a clinician, but the problem I hear from many places is where people use formulations that may give rise to unexpected outcomes, deleterious outcomes, and the clinician then has to be sure of what they're doing. Simple procedures like Panchakarma, some of the karmas in Panchakarma can yield unwanted results, and the physician must be prepared for it. So I don't see that there are difficulties, at least in those countries where Ayurveda is accepted or the traditional medicine is accepted. In Canada, you can practice Chinese medicine. It is permitted, and so is the Indian systems, but you have to stay within the system. You must follow the local regulations. In brief, that is my comment. I'm not a clinician, so I cannot tell you anything more about it, but that question that's raised here by, let me see who has raised this question. Thank you for raising this question. Anusuya, thank you for raising this question. But anyway, the point here is...
So that wasn't my question, it was someone else. Someone
else's, Anusuya, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you help me with who asked that question in the chat box, Anusuya?
Yes, sir, I will try.
Sir, this was Hema.
It was Dr. Hema.
Hema, I don't know if that answers your question. What we should do, Hema, is that we will bring people who are in Canada or USA. I will show you at least the name of one person. It's there on my stack of slides. You will see that one person, Dr. Harish Verma, who's based in Toronto and the founder of the Canadian College of Ayurveda. We'll bring Harish Verma for you to discuss with and ask these very specific questions. So if Hema, so I don't know where, Hema, I don't know where you are located. It'll be lovely to hear your voice. And
We request Dr. Hema Shah to raise a hand.
Hema, when you are ready to chat, please come on and just tell us a little more about yourself. Hema, there you are. You can unmute. Maybe Lakshmi has to. Hema, hello.
Thank you so much for the really informative lecture, sir. I am actually practicing in Pune. I am MD Ayurveda. Since 20 years I'm practicing, but I have a permanent residency of Canada. So in recent future, I'm trying to move there. And I was wondering how to practice, because I was checking on internet how they have different organizations where you have to be their member. And then lots of doctors are practicing, but how to import the medicines and all, I have little confusion regarding it. So I was wondering.
Thank you, Hema. Thank you for your question. Now, I'm going to put one slide up on the top. Maybe you can take the details that I have on that slide. It's slightly, so it's going to be out of sequence to what I wanted to present, but let me just grab that slide so that you have the details straight away when it's still fresh on your mind. So this is the person I'm talking about, Vaidya Harish Verma. And he studied Ayurveda in Punjab. He was one of the excellent students in Punjab University. And he is the founder president of the Canadian College of Ayurveda and Yoga. He's also founder of Shushruth Ayurvedic Clinic in Delhi, and that's the website. If you look at shushruth.com, you can get his details. Harish ji is very, very passionate about promoting Ayurveda in Canada and across the north of America. And he's interested in many other questions, particularly the code of practice for manufacturing, marketing, and use of Ayurvedic and Ayurveda Unani Siddha herbomineral preparations in particular. But he's very cautious. He says, standards have to improve. He's aware of the dangers of using this and unexpected results if the formulations are not pure or used correctly, and all those clinical aspects, And he also feels that many of those health issues don't require these complicated, a lot of problems here in the West are because of simple swasthavrit issues, he says. You just take care of some of those aspects and people feel better. I have messages that come from Sweden, for instance. I'll show you some discussions that are going on in Sweden in the area of Ayurveda. There is an umbrella organization, just like what Ishji said about umbrella organizations. There's an umbrella organization in Sweden where it looks after and gathers all the needs for Sweden. And the document I will show you, you'll see some of those needs listed out. And they coordinate among each other, discuss among each other, and you will see from the document that they are constructing how simple procedures of Ayurveda can benefit people. Simple, very simple intervention. So you have experience in that, and maybe that is the first line of approach if you're going to Canada. Harish ji is of the opinion that health should, aspects of the best Ayurveda must come across to the world. So Ayurveda should not be diluted, it should not be distorted, and we must offer the best possible aspect of Ayurveda, number one. Second question he's very interested in is generating more and more people who are called Ayurveda practitioners. Now, note this word here, the phrase here, Ayurveda practitioner. Now, what does he mean by a Ayurveda practitioner? A practitioner is a person who works with those safe aspects of Ayurveda, the very safe aspects. So there are so many traditionally used formulations like Triphala Churna, etc., etc. Ayurveda practitioner is a person who has mastered the skill of some of those safe to use formulations. They may not be able to do the surgical aspects. They may not be able to do complicated treatments of avarana, for instance. You're from Maharashtra, you know about the Nanals of Maharashtra and their excellence in managing avarana. So the practitioner is a group of people who work with the simpler aspects, which is very important and a very important part of also promoting the message of Ayurveda. The third question that Harish ji is very, very interested in is the phrase traditional medicine. What is traditional medicine? Traditional medicine are procedures, systems, or formulations that are known forever. We don't need to isolate chemicals from them or molecules from them. We know that that simple herbal formulation will work. Trikatu, for instance, we know it works. Now, an Ayurveda practitioner is somebody who has learned the use of a subset of the large collection of formulations in the pharmacopoeia. So if we look at our digital knowledge library, we have about 30,000 formulations, sorry, 300,000 formulations. So about 275 tending towards 300,000 formulations. And within that are very specialized formulations that is not for everybody to use. Even an MD in Ayurveda will require many years of perhaps supervision in connection with the trained Vaidya to be able to use those formulations. You know, in Maharashtra, you have in Pune, you have a big tradition of the Rasa Aushadhis, which was the big company that was set up by Mama Gokhale. And you know about this, Hema. And those are formulations that we don't want them to be used as over-the-counter formulations. We don't want them to be used by people who cannot, who don't have the background and training to use these kind of formulations. Now, Harish Vermaji, the example he gives us is that he has success, says about 20,000 cases on use of Ayurvedic formulations for management of ulcerative colitis, which is a very, very complicated problem, ulcerative colitis. So he manages to do this. So this is in response to your question, Hema. There are people there. Ishji has said there are umbrella organizations that you can connect with, and you can learn from them what is it that you need when you go into a new place, what are the things you have to follow, what are the things you need to do. There are many, many practitioners, many, many umbrella organizations that you can become a part of, and they will guide you in this whole process. Ishji will hopefully be the contact point for...
I can add some information, sir, if you allow me.
Please, please.
Today we started with a research and innovation seminar at Mauritius, where we have got many international delegates rolling in, and I have got like a very important part to deliver, where I would be suggesting many like Ayurveda viewpoints. How can Ayurveda help the Mauritian health and economy? From the mention of Sweden, I recall there was a representative from Sweden, Miss Majja from the
Thank you, Ishji. Please continue.
Miss Majja. She was from the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and what she highlighted was, which is relevant to the audience over here. They are looking for like talents from like all the fields. So if you believe like the country wants to attract talent from anywhere in the world. So if you can put your case like rightly, as one doctor from Pune wants to migrate to Australia, Canada, I was just hearing, maybe if you can like really send your papers to the government of Sweden, etc., and you can justify your like credentials, no wonders they could welcome you. And because everyone the world over is hunting for talent, and the healthcare talent is number one. And none can beat us, we being the healthcare specialist. So really the future is very promising, sir. I can pass this message on to the students and young beginners, sir.
Ishji, if it is possible, could you put the name of the person, just a approximate name?
Like, as we write Majja, Majja, and we call her Maya. We call her Maya, but we write as Majja, Majja, and the second part was very difficult, so I could not note it down. But I'll meet her tomorrow again, sir. I'll get her details, and she is from the Ministry of Economic Affairs.
Ministry of Economic. Thank you so much. I think Ishji, you have given an upbeat message, and thanks Hema for raising this question. And in response to Hemaji's question, you have given us some additional information. Ishji, I just want to show.
Thank you so much, sir.
So, Hema, I'm just putting Ministry of Economic Affairs. Is that right, Ishji? Economic Affairs.
Yes.
I'm putting that just in the chat box so that it stays with us and we can follow this up. Ishji, I'm just going to put on the screen the document that's evolving in Sweden. from Ayurveda Sweden, and you can see the flavor of what is on their mind and what they're thinking about. Can you see my screen? Not yet?
Not yet, sir.
Not yet? Okay. Apologies. Let me just see if I get the right document. Okay, here it is. Tell me if it's visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you, Lakshmi. Thank you, Ishji. So you can see this is still a draft of a document, but you can see some of the points here. 10 areas of development of Ayurveda in Sweden. So let me come back. We are talking about One World, One Health agenda. And here are some points that, again, we touched on Sweden, we touched on Canada, we touched on America. We are now looking at some of the I won't read through everything, just to give in it. Geriatrics, very, very important area. Ayurveda for elderly care. Many people live alone, etc., etc. Number 3, pediatric care, particularly for pregnant women who suffer from weight or hypertension or all of these things. There is no help there. Nutrition is a very important area. Ayurvedic nutrition is a very, very important area. Last week in Bhopal, there was a big event that was organized by the Vishwa Ayurveda Parishad, and Pavan Sharmaji, who organizes our platform, the one that I talked about, he was at the event, and he came back saying we had the most amazing food-related event. We had 80 tables with 80 different teams from across India, everybody presenting Ayurvedic foods. So food and nutrition is a very important area. Another area, back problems, Ayurveda and yoga for back problems. There are many, many cases of katigraha, which is treated with Ayurvedic procedures. And you get incredible results, and you don't need many cases you were recommended for surgery, you don't need surgery. The disc retracts, pain goes, etc. Ayurveda for cardiovascular disease, very, very, this is the deep end. I wouldn't expect the so-called Ayurveda practitioner to manage cardiovascular disease, although we have many, many cases, many, many examples where we get reversion of calcified tissue, calcified vessels, etc., etc. So there is a lot going on there, but that is for the very specialized MD with a specialist experience in that space. Ayurveda and yoga for women's health, particularly in menopause. This is a big problem. There are a lot of people who suffer unnecessarily, and there could be very simple interventions. And this is something that an Ayurveda practitioner can help with. Stress management, herbs as medicine, and to understand local herbs, educational procedures, to understand how to appreciate herbs using the Draviguna principles. And just like Ishji has mentioned, the longer term vision is to establish a BAM, and the S, you can see the S is put in brackets here, but the Ayurvedic medicine at the graduate level, where you study, like you people have studying or have studied 4 to 6 years of Ayurvedic training, but based in Sweden. So these are some of the examples of where there are takers, thinkers, and like what the Ishji has said, the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Sweden are looking into this. And this is something we need to engage with very actively and try and learn a little more. If there are any questions, Lakshmi, please open the floor for questions, but I think Ishji wants to comment here. Ishji,
sir, I will, very sorry to say I have to take your leave, sir.
Thank you.
I did not expect it to be so interesting, and so it really, I'm time bound, and
we
really,
appreciate it. If there is any last message you want to give the people attending this,
surely.
please.
Sir, I'm very, very happy to be with you over here, sir, and interacting with altogether a new group. We have been together many times. What I would be suggesting, many questions, what the list of questions we got is a reverse pharmacology can be a right word which can re-establish, like how do Ayurveda herbs work, or how could this blindness could this like optic nerve atrophy, how could this go away? So we have to follow the principles of reverse pharmacology, where we know the result first and we go back, we try to track down the single candidate molecule, what could have been working, by repeating trial and error, repeating the trials again and again, getting some plus minus success or not. So that can be a right methodology. And we do not need a proof which could be an answer to many questions, because the patient is a living testimony. The patient was having a low backache, now the patient is not having low backache. The daughter of the prime minister was not able to see, now she can see. So we don't need any bigger proof, sir. So Ayurveda is beyond any suspicion and doubt. We could be incompetent, incomplete, but the Shastra is like beyond any suspicion, sir. So I'll catch up.
Before you leave, could you tell us what is the event in Mauritius today? Because this is part of this One World, One Health thinking.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This has got a French name. We call it La Assise. La Assise. I don't know the full name, but you can maybe I can write it for you, sir.
Thank you. Put it on my chat box or put it on my WhatsApp and I'll follow up. Thank you so much.
La Assise, where we had the president of the country today is sitting with us, and I had a wonderful word with him. Yes, sir. I would like to add this information for our audience. The president of the country, Mr. Rupan, has very categorically mentioned to me that he wants an Ayurveda garden at the State House, at his official residence. The official residence is like a spread over 60 acres of land, and he has handed over around 2 acres to us, and he wants me to lay out like a wonderful Ayurveda garden. And I have shortlisted some like 50 plants, sir, 50 herbs, which I'll be working with his team. And soon the Rashtrapati Bhavan will be having an Ayurveda garden at Mauritius, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
you have brought an additional level of excitement to today's event. Complete surprise, but you have shared so much with us. I appreciate you are short of time, but thank you. I'm sure everybody here also thanks you for joining us today and sharing those details about what is happening in Ayurveda. Before you leave, what is the status of that hospital, the 50-bed hospital that's coming up? Have they started construction?
Not construction, sir. The land has been allotted. But now the Mauritius is undergoing the budgetary session, where they would be earmarking some budget within a month. That is when the drawings would come up, and then the construction could begin by, I believe, around like 4 to 6 months time, sir.
You have given us hot news, fresh off the press about developments in Mauritius, connections with Africa and what is going to happen there. And I think everybody here is listening straight from you and with all the details. Thank you very much for being with us. We'll let you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madanji. Thank you very much, organizers and DIKSHA E-Learning. And I'll be very happy to be with you once again. Namaskar.
Namaste.
Thank you, Ish, sir. It was really very fortunate to have you here and listen to you. And thank you, sir, Madan sir, for the amazing session. And now the session is open for discussion. I request the participants either raise their hand or post their question in the chat box so we can have a interaction with Madan sir.
Thank you, Lakshmi. If people are quiet for thinking about questions, I can share one or two other things, resources that they can use to while they're framing their thoughts and questions. Maybe I can just put one or two comments here. I showed you about I want to draw everybody's attention to this amazing resource and a very sophisticated concept. Unfortunately, Professor Oja is not with us anymore. He passed on a few weeks ago. And for students who are in that space and who are wanting to see how to bring these two systems together. Now, there was a question about pathogenesis, how it is understood in Ayurveda and how it is understood in modern perspectives. And I've taken this example of Avarna. Avarna seems like a completely strange, unusual, complicated way of understanding some aspects of pathology. And if you spend a little time just looking through what Dr. Oja has given us, you will see how clear he is in his mind about how to appreciate Ayurvedic perspectives in the context of modern terminology, modern science, the terms that are used for pathogenesis. Now, if you go into those resources, you will find many, many things of compilations by Professor Oja. And it seems so unfortunate that he passed away recently. And he was in Pune at the D.Y. Patel College of Ayurveda and Research Center. And this is one example. I just highlight this just to show you an example of where I started off with the example, the story of the former Prime Minister of Kenya's daughter and her eyesight. And I want to put this example of how Dr. Oja connects Ayurvedic terminology with modern terminology and the process and what are the indications. Now, when I look at some aspects of atrophy, I can see how a good understanding of the Samhitas will help you understand pathology, and you will see the connections between the two sciences, the science of Ayurveda, which is presented in a very terse way in the Samhitas, and where how it can be understood to explain modern pathology. A second example is a very recently published paper on yoga. And it talks about the autonomic nervous system, heart rate variability, Om chanting, etc., etc. And it says, a study showed that brief chanting of Om for 5 minutes might enhance parasympathetic nervous system activity. Now, this is I mentioned we will look at Ayush systems. This is on the yoga side. And there is something there for people who want to do research, for something there for clinical use, some people who want to practice it for themselves. There are areas like this where you can work with effectively. Now, in terms of that One Earth, One Health agenda, you will see a lot of information available that is available on the website. And we must thank our Prime Minister for bringing out this in many, many global agendas. So we are a small team looking at this, and Hena's question about how to use this in Canada. It requires political support. It requires discussion between governments. And we are so fortunate that we have Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, who's very committed to this whole area and is giving a lot of support in Delhi, in government-to-government discussions to make people alert about where things need to go in terms of the global context, the development in Jamnagar and in Jaipur. These are, again, resources available on the website. You can find it at narendramodi.in, and it talks about the opening of the global center in Jamnagar, and also the work related to conversion of the National Institute of Ayurveda in Jaipur into a whole new institute with an international exposure. There's a new All India Institute of Ayurveda that is getting ready in Goa for those who don't know about it. And in terms of the fine details of the WHO Global Center for Traditional Medicine, the vision, the values, and the focus is being finalized and is being presented to the world. The vision is to catalyze ancestral wisdom with modern science. So that's the bridge that we talked about a little bit with that example of how optic atrophy can be helped. And as Ishji says, how we might have to do a little more detailed research to get to understand how these things work. And the values, as highlighted in this document, is a global perspective on health, which is the theme of our presentation today, defined by expertise, evidence, and practice, and cooperation among individuals, cultures, and disciplines. So we've touched on that today. Openness and agility for positive impact. Again, we can see what is happening in Mauritius. I'm so happy Ishji could be here with us to tell you directly what is happening right now in Mauritius. And the focus should be on evidence and learning, data, analytics, innovation, technology. In terms of innovation technology, I just want to touch briefly on 3 resources that are there on the web for all of you to see. I'm just going to tell me when my screen comes on.
Yes, sir.
Lakshmi, is it on? No, not yet.
No, sir, not yet.
Okay, I want to take you through to 3 technology-related things that are connected with bear with me.
No problem, sir.
This is I have too many windows open here. Okay, there we are. I think that's the one. Is it displaying something?
Yes, sir. Ayurveda
What's
wellness at your fingertips.
Okay, good. Okay, so number 1, this is a small technology initiative called Ayurveda. And if you go in here, it talks about many things that you can do with this app. It's a little app and you can measure so many things. And there are reasons why it's called Ayurveda, because it helps you understand many aspects of Ayurvedic about yourself, what you need to do in terms of yoga, what you need to take in terms of herbs, and how it is going to be beneficial. On a similar line, the next one, if you can, Lakshmi, I hope you can see Nadi Tarangini. And Nadi Tarangini is again, comes from Pune, from where Hema comes. And you can see there are over 450 installations in 12 countries. And it tracks, it helps you follow your Nadi, and it gives you reports, and it gives you many aspects of that one area of Ayurveda, which is very contentious, but how to interface that with data science. That was one of the questions that was asked by us. Can you see the Lexus Design Award on the screen? And
yes, sir.
This is one area, Lakshmi. So the question was, where can we see applications? That was the last question on our long list about this interfacing between Ayurveda and other sciences. The last one I want to show you is one called Nadi Swara. And this is a small team that is based in Bangalore. There's a problem with Nadi Swara. I'll put this in the chat box so that you can, there might be a problem with the server there. I'll stop, there it is. I'll put this Nadi Swara on the chat box here. Now, Minal, your question, what is an umbrella organization? Minal, would you like to ask this question?
We request Dr. Minal to raise her hand so she can ask the question.
Minal, you are here with us. Please raise your hand and then we can take your question. We want to hear, the reason why I say raise your hands, and so that we know where you are from. Minal. Are you based in India or elsewhere? Minal, namaskar.
Namaskar, sir. I am from Baroda, Gujarat,
Baroda.
India. Yeah.
Very good, Minal. What are you studying Ayurveda in Baroda? Are you finished your BAMS or MD or
I
something?
have finished my BMS from Ahmedabad.
Ahmedabad. Okay. And are you practicing now, or are you working with somebody or working for
So my
yourself?
husband is gynecologist. Our own hospital at Manjalpur, Baroda, and I'm working on the बस ये गर्भ संस्कार है, gynec practice. I'm doing गर्भ, yeah.
Minal, thank you for joining. You can see that people from Sweden would like somebody like you. So you can see it is on their list. Sweden wants to know about Garva Sanskar. How do you understand? What is Masa Masa, Garbhini Parcharya, and all these kind of things? They want to understand these things. And I'm sure somebody like you will be able to help. Now, your question is, what is an umbrella organization? Umbrella organization is an organization that brings together all the practitioners into one kind of a cohesive group, so that if there are questions or if there are comments or concerns, everybody can be, the information can be relayed very easily to that whole group. So here in the UK, for instance, we have many umbrella organizations for Ayurveda. We have something called the recently formed organization, British Ayurveda Medical Council. And that is an umbrella organization that brings together so many other organizations. And those other sub-organizations will have their own members, maybe from the north of England, south of England, etc., or depending on who are the promoters of that organization and their interests. So an umbrella organization basically is an organization that holds together many other organizations. I don't know if that conveys a little bit of what. And the
How
reason,
can we join this group, sir?
Good question. How do you join these groups? Now, many of them are local groups, so they want to bring together local Vaidyas or local patients. So within the UK or within Sweden, they will bring together all the UK Sweden people. Now, how to join it if you're outside India? The best way is just to send them a message and saying, this is who you are and that you're interested. Let me see if I can put the British Ayurvedic Medical Council. Also here for the European countries, we have the European Ayurveda Association. So if you see, Rina, I have put my, if you can see this, if my screen is displaying, then you can see this organization.
So there is no screen sharing yet.
Okay, here we are.
Yes, sir.
So, the British Ayurvedic Medical Council. So if you see in that web page, you will see the reasons why we have these organizations and the benefits of joining this organization. And you can, it's a central resource. So an umbrella organization will be a central resource for other organizations to be a part of. So that's one thing. If you look here, this is Dr. Shanta Godgama, who is the patron of BAMC, and he's been practicing Ayurveda here in the UK for about 40 years. He studied Ayurveda in Sri Lanka. And if you look in here, I'm trying to see who are the member organizations. So you see here, look at this, join the British Ayurveda Medical Council. So you can be an Ayurvedic physician, you can be an Ayurvedic practitioner, you can be a therapist, and you can, this resource will help you find out where people are located. Similarly, the European Ayurveda Association, for which I am the General Secretary, you can see their website and you can see what they do, which countries. So if you look in here, this is the, Lakshmi, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Visible, okay. Now, you can see all the details about who they are, about Ayurveda, and if you can, I think they might have something here about the members. So you see, this is an umbrella organization for the other European Ayurveda group. So if you go to, say, Poland, and you want to find out who's the person working in Poland, you have their details. Or you can look at Switzerland, and you can get an idea of who are the Ayurveda people in Switzerland. There's a website here, so you can click on that, and you can see who is there in Switzerland. That site doesn't open, don't worry, but you can get information. You can look at all the countries: Turkey, Ukraine, United Kingdom, etc., etc. So that is in reply to your question about. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
So look through this resource. I'll put this on the. This is just one organization somewhere in the Czech Republic. I think you can see the kind of things they sell. For you people who have done deep Ayurveda studies, that might seem a bit. You might not see the depth of Ayurveda that you would have studied in Ahmedabad or Baroda or Jamnagar or somewhere, but this is what is there in Europe. But you can see when we talk about One Earth, One Health, it is this asymmetry that will be resolved. When there is more interaction between people in India with people around, using information that's available on the website like this, then you are in a position to bring about that dialogue. So Minal, thank you for asking your question. I hope this was helpful. Dr. Ashok Mishra is here with us. I just wanted to hear a little more from Dr. Mishra because he put a comment here saying valuable information. Dr. Mishra, namaskar.
Dr. Ashok Mishra, sir.
Dr. Mishra.
I think.
Hello, sir. Namaskar.
Namaskar, Dr. Mishra. Thank you for your comment saying very
How
nice.
are you, sir?
Very nice information
Very
you
nice
said.
information you shared, sir. Very nice information, really. You are given all the information across the globe where the Ayurveda is popular.
Thank you, Mr. Raji. Where are you located today? Where have you?
I am senior practitioner, practicing Ayurveda from last 35 years, sir.
Where are you based, Mr. Raji?
Based from Maharashtra, sir.
Maharashtra. Very nice.
I came to Bangalore.
You are not, okay.
Yes,
so
sir.
happy that the Maharashtra.
Yes, sir. Very happy. I'm very happy of listening all of your information, emphasis, and everything. Really appreciate to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Raji. Thank you for staying and listening to this, because Maharashtra has a very strong lineage in Ayurveda. I don't know if you studied. Did you study in Maharashtra? Ashokji, did you study Ayurveda in Maharashtra? There's a...
Hello, Dr. Ashok Mishra, sir. Your voice is breaking.
Voice is breaking.
Busy with patient.
I'm sorry, but
Sorry.
Dr. Ashok Mishra, sir, is having some network issues.
I see there is a problem with Ashokji. If I wanted, if I may, Lakshmi, just 2 or 3 more little snippets that will show how students are already connecting in this space in terms of the questions raised today. Lakshmi, here is one slide that shows one of our young MD students. Tell me if the screen is full screen now.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, this is Vaishna Ravindran, who BAMS. She studied in Chennai, and she's now a MD candidate at Vaidyaratnam PS Warrior Ayurveda College in Kottakkal in Kerala. And Vaishna had been with us at one of my webinars in Toronto, in Canada, and we were discussing about Nasya and the microbiome, the bacteria that are found in your nasal cavity and how they influence your health. And Vaishna is thinking about where she can go. So this is in reply to your question about where can we go for further studies. Vaishna wants to go and do research in, she wants to do more modern biology research. She's understood many aspects of Ayurveda. Her MD work that she's doing is on Udvartana and on peripheral neuropathy. And she wants to go and do more research. And her mind is starting to work on research projects. And this was one question. She says, microbiome and Nasya. I was wondering if it would be possible to do Nasya on a patient with a specific condition that is chronic rhinitis and do a before and after nasal microbiome study. What do you think about the possibility of such a study on just one patient? Do you think it would be feasible? So this is one example. Now, Vaishna is already doing it. She's already discussing with people. She's already asking the correct questions. So I hope many more students will discuss this. Now, in terms of how you connect, that was one of the questions. How do you connect? Who do you connect with? And how do you engage? And how do you open up dialogues? This is, I'm talking about liver, which is the, from the Ayurveda perspectives, you know, it's the Mulasthana of the Raktavashrotas. And even within liver research here in the Western world, so they don't know anything about Mulasthana, they don't know about Raktavashrotas, they don't know how well understood liver and liver health is in Ayurveda. But you can see they also have a parampara. So Professor David Adams, shown on the right-hand side, he's the Pro-Vice Chancellor and the head of the College of Medicine and Dental Sciences in Birmingham. And you can see how to connect with David and his work. David works on the immunology of the liver. Now, he had a PhD student. I'm talking about parampara now. He had a PhD student called Bertus Eckstein, who is now in Canada at the University of Calgary. And many of the experiments that they have done and the work they're doing now is to do with immunology of the liver. In Ayurveda, if you now look at what is happening in India, this was one of our recent events, that best liver care is as understood in Ayurveda. And I put this up for a very special reason, because all of them made incredible presentations. You can see these presentations, they're archived in the website, in the IRIS website. And I particularly want to highlight this presentation from Vishnu, Dr. Vishnu Pillai, who's Associate Professor in the Department of Panchakarma at Amrita School of Ayurveda in Kollam. And he presented 2 case studies. So this is partly in response to the question, how do we document studies? If you go to this presentation, and if you look at how Vishnuji has documented results, you will see the first steps being done there to understand how liver markers can be monitored before and after Ayurvedic treatment. And these are all things that are happening. It's happening in India. You need to connect with the people who are doing this work. In your college and in Coimbatore, there's a lot of excellent work that's going on. Maybe with every day people are being treated for liver problems, but somehow it is not connecting with people like David Adams in Birmingham or his Bertus in Calgary. And we need to take these messages out to people. And how do you do this? You just have to make connections. You have to make contact with these people. So there it is. There is a opportunity. There is a way in which you can do this, and there is a way in which you can establish connections and discuss. Help them with their language. Help them with their language.
Thanks.
Help them in their understanding. Help them with what you're doing. Use a language that both sides will feel comfortable to use, and that's the first step. Lakshmi, I can see 2 questions here from Minal on
Yes, sir.
Devaprasya and Mantra Chikitsa, and also
Deve
Hina.
Prashraya and Mantra Chikitsa, and Dr. Hina is also the same question about Mantra Chikitsa. Your experience with Mantra Chikitsa.
Oh, I'm number 1, Hina and Minal. I am not a practitioner, so I am not qualified to talk about I'm not qualified to talk about any of the clinical aspects, but what I will do here, Lakshmi, if I may, just what I will do is just to point you to that resource where you
Yes,
can
sir.
listen to clinicians, experts who are talking about this. Okay, so is my screen visible? Not yet.
Not yet, sir.
Okay. I've put this on the chat box so that you can see. Lakshmi, tell me when the screen is visible.
Yes, sir. It's not yet. It's starting
coming.
to. Yes, sir. Now it is.
Hina, do you see this talk here? Visham Jwara. And within this, if you follow these two, and as you come to the last speaker here on this presentation, not very clear who is the speaker. There is Krishnamarji here. And if you look at that, look at Independent Research Ethics Society and their Vishamajwara section. And if you listen to that last speaker who's from Agra, then you will get one example of mantra chikitsa. If you go into the videos here, we now have the Independent Research Ethics Society now has the world record for the total number of webinars hosted by any one person. So that is Pawan Kumarji, who is there. He's the mastermind behind this whole thing. Today was our 363rd webinar, and you can see all the resources here: naturopathy, Ayush in rural India, best liver care, and we have some senior people talking here on research heritage, the golden future of Ayurveda. If you go, Sutika Pracharya, there was a question there. If you go in here, you see, if you go into this section, astrology for good health, there are some discussions here about mantra chikitsa and how it is seen to be effective, how you have to understand aspects of some of the Jyotishi aspects and how you can do some mantra chikitsa. How does it work? It's a very, very complicated question, because biological systems, so Minal and Hina, biological systems are complex systems. And what is special about biological systems is you see non-linear effects. Non-linearity means a very small input can give a very high output. And second thing is that there are aspects of the human body and physiology that is beyond the indriyas, the five indriyas. There are many things. They say pratyaksham alpam, apratyaksham is bhahutam. There are many aspects apratyaksha that also has an effect on the human body. And Ayurveda and the Ayush systems understand those apratyaksha aspects. And somewhere there is how these things work. And there are many people who use it. There is the whole area of connections between the unusual concepts that are well understood in yoga, about chakras and nadis. And there is a presentation by Hema Malini in one of our talks that's archived, where she talks about chakras and mudras and bij mantras for each chakra. And she says, Hema is a BAMS student. She studied BAMS in Chennai. She practices in Chennai. And she says, I get the most amazing results on my patients when I just give them a simple mudra that is connected to each of the chakras and ask them to recite some bij mantras. And it works. How does it work? We have it left to people like you to start doing these studies, experiments, to discuss with practitioners where they're getting results connecting with them, understanding. You are practitioners, you are qualified to handle patients. Then try it on those patients. Try it on patients, see the effects you have and see what happens. Lakshmi, I hope that gives you a rough idea. It's not a complete answer. There is deep biology in this. I can point you to some research papers on sound and its effect on gene activity, which is my area of interest, and how physiology can change us just by listening to sounds. I can point you in all those directions. And there is evidence there enough to show that there is a basis for it. So Hina, that is my comment there. I also see one question here, Lakshmi, from Shahnaz. Shahnaz?
Yes, sir. Her question is whether we can apply, whether any universities where we can apply for PhD.
Wonderful. Shahnaz, thank you for raising this question. Are there any universities where you can apply? Yes, every university will accept. And the place, the difficulty is most people here do not understand what is BAMS. They don't understand. They get confused. So your job is to explain to them what you have done, who you are. You have to explain to them saying, this is me. In India, we have a course called BAMS, which is very much like doing medicine. And this is what we do. We study 4 years or 6 years of undergraduate studies. Then we do, if you're an MD, I have done 2 years or 3 years of MD, where we work with work in the clinic. We work with patients. We know how to handle patients. And I now want to come to do a PhD. And then identify, Shahnaz, identify a team that is working on something that is connected to your interest. So you must be clear in your mind what your interest is. It's something to do with use, like what Vaishna pointed out. So she's saying, I'm interested in doing some research on peripheral neuropathy in diabetes or some complication, or she wants to do effect of nasya on nasal microbes. And these are very focused questions. So you must start developing very focused area of interest and very focused research questions, and then do the next step. So I pointed you to, if you're interested in some aspects of immunology of the liver, and you have so many treatments that are done for liver health. You know what are the lakshanas of a compromised liver. You understand the concept of mulastan, and the role that the liver plays. And you might then say, well, I want to do research in this aspect. I want to understand something about use of some herbs or formulations or some intervention on, say, immunology of the liver, for instance. And then you look around, you use those key phrases, immunology, liver, and then look for a PhD positions. I can point you to one resource called Find a PhD. But this is only the first step. Can you see my screen, Lakshmi? Not yet.
Not yet, sir.
Bear with me. There we are. So it's a simple site. It's called findaphd.com. There we are. I'm going to put that here. And let us take that example. I'll show you how I would work on this. So this is only one side of the story. The correct way to do this would be to make contact. Once you've identified a PhD position here, perhaps, you will then make contact with the research team, okay? So let us do a simple search. We said, so you see, there are 5,445 PhD projects and programs worldwide that's available at this website. And you can search using keywords. So if I put this here as keyword search, let us say liver and immunology. So this is a very specialized area. Let us see what it reveals. Lakshmi, I hope you can see my screen now.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
Okay. Now, PhD studentship probing the tumor microenvironment of hepatocellular carcinoma to establish an immune, sorry, how do I close this? Well, highly desirable. Lakshmi, stop me if you cannot see the screen.
No, sir, the screen is still visible.
Screen is visible, okay. The project will be highly desirable for students who are interested in research in cancer therapies, particularly exciting field of cancer immunotherapy that's now becoming. And you can read more about the project. You can see who's the supervisor. What I would then do, so it's Professor D. Mann at Imperial College. So what I would then do, you see there are so many other buttons here. This is a city in the country, cancer biology, immunology, medicine, and you can start looking, exploring all these spaces. But this is only the first step. You would then have, the ideal thing is to connect with the person who was, let us see if we can get a little more information on Professor Derek Mann, and he's in Newcastle. Now, your challenge is to connect with somebody like Professor Mann and to convince him that you are the best candidate for doing that project. So look at this, he's Dean of Research and Innovation. And he has a personal website, and we will just look at his personal website. Oh, so it's a problem. Okay, we can't find his website, but there is a person there. And the email address, telephone number, where he's located, all that information is available there. And the research that he does. So all these are terms you will start to have to just familiarize with. Maybe you know them already, but if you don't know, then try and familiarize yourself with aging, cancer, fibrosis, and you can see what kind of things he's working on. Epigenetic regulation of alcoholic liver fibrosis. Now, this is an area where Ayurveda can offer a lot of help. And there are so many other areas he's interested in, he's working on. So you do a little bit of reading, and then, so molecular drivers of fibrosis at the hepatic epithelial mesenchymal barrier, or towards neutrophils in hepatocellular carcinoma. So you can get a rough idea of what he's doing. If that is the area that you are interested in, that's your challenge. Your challenge is to be clear in your mind what it is that you are interested in. The research supervisor is looking for your energy and enthusiasm. They want to see that you are really hungry to do this work. So, Shahnaz, that is in reply to your question, a very kind of brief answer, but I've given you that one site showing findaphd.com. I think I'll put this in the chat box. If not, I'll put it in here. So look through that, and then you can get an idea of how quickly to identify a lab or a resource that has something that is related to what you want to do. And it'll help you refine your thinking also. It will help you refine what it is that you want to do, what are the strengths, what are your strengths, which part of the world do you want to be in, etc., etc., etc. So in brief, that is my, that's the way I would approach this problem. We can talk about this. You can connect, please connect, and we can chat about it. My details are with Lakshmi, or I can put this here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So I can see Shahnaz,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you. Shahnaz has understood this. Hema has a question. Hema.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir, to interrupt, but since there is a time constraint, we'll have time for only one more last question. We have a question from Dr. Hema. So kindly enlighten us whether the registration in CCIM is mandatory apart from the respective state registration for global practice. Thank you in advance.
Hema, thank you. Now, interesting that Hema has joined us. This is the Hema that I was talking about. This is the Hema who is working on chakras and connecting chakras to mudras, and connecting chakras and mudras to Bij mantras. So Hema, thank you for your question. Now, in reply to your question, Hema, CCIM is a national body, you see, and unless, my understanding is that unless CCIM has a formal arrangement with a similar organization in some other country, then being a member of CCIM or registration CCIM will not help in the context of global practice, because unless the other country recognizes, it is just like saying somebody who has studied medicine in Sweden, let us say they've studied medicine in Sweden, and they want to practice Ayurveda in India. We won't permit that because they haven't studied Ayurveda, and they don't understand the cultural nuances, etc., etc. So there is a difficulty here, and the way to crack that difficulty is for government-to-government dialogue. So right now, you may know that the UK Prime Minister was in India, Boris Johnson was in India, and there were many discussions going on about government-to-government dialogue. And one of the things that will happen there may be an agreement on some aspects of Ayurveda and how it can be practiced in the UK. For instance, Ishji, who was here with us earlier, he has told us about an agreement that is already there between Mauritius and India. Mauritius sends students to India to learn Ayurveda, they come back home, they practice Ayurveda. And if you are a practitioner from India, you can go there, show your registration, and maybe you will be able to practice there because there is already an arrangement between the governments. So this is the reply to your question, Hema. Hema, I'm happy you have joined us today because there was one question that came up. I don't know if you were with us when I was trying to take your name to address the question about mantra chikitsa, etc. Maybe the person who asked that question can connect with, I think it was Hina and Minal from Baroda and Hina from Pune, I think. They had questions on mantra chikitsa. Maybe they can take your number. If you wanted to chat with them, please share your details, Hema, on the chat box, and they can pick that up from there and they can connect with you and learn a little more. Lakshmi?
Thank you, sir.
So,
Yes, sir.
I hope this informal session has given you a rough idea of what was in my mind about One Earth, One Health. I hope I've given you a little bit about the political background.
Oh yes, sir. It definitely. We really enjoyed the talk and the discussions, the interactive approach, all in together. And the session was really amazing, sir. And we are very fortunate that we were able to listen to you. Hope we can have more such interactive sessions with you again.
I can see from our questions. So the points I've touched on, I've reviewed. Let me just quickly brief what we have done. I've reviewed the questions that were asked. I want to thank, number one, Anupama Madam in Kottakkal for bringing me back on this platform. So thanks to Anupama ji. Thanks to Akhil for compiling questions that I've just reformatted a little bit and displayed on the screen there. And they were very, very important questions. They're all questions awaiting more discussion. So I'm happy we could put all of that together, Lakshmi. You have a copy of those questions too.
Yes, I do.
We can revisit that and we can, catch some of those points. In my presentation, I hope I could touch the politics of this One Earth, One Health by bringing in Professor Ish Sharma, who is the Ayush professor in Mauritius. And he gave you a first-hand account of what is happening in Mauritius. He gave you the legalities of practicing Ayurveda in Mauritius and the Act of Parliaments in Mauritius. He told you, updated you on many of the ongoing developments in Mauritius and the connections that are being made with the 55 countries of Africa, and the hospital is coming up. I hope we could take one topical issue of the eye problem in that Rosemary had, and we could show you some aspects of Ayurvedic clinical practice that somehow shows the kind of gap that is there between amazing clinical results that are happening and the lack of understanding in other parts of the world. And hopefully those One Health dialogues and discussions between the government of India and other governments will alert to these kind of interactions and possibilities for the future. I hope I could also convey to you a little bit about there was one question about the pathology and the etiopathology of some complications as understood in Ayurveda and in modern biology. My feeling is if you go to a certain level, you will see they are similar. Yes, you understand cell biology using Tridosh Siddhant, Panchabhut Siddhant. You can understand progression etiology using modern descriptors, and it will look almost identical if you approach it using Kriyakala, Shad Kriyakala. It will look the same, except you have to see how they are connected. If you don't know one side and you know only the other side, then it's difficult to see where the two connected. I hope I've given you a little bit in the context of Rosemary's optic neural atrophy. I've shown you how we can drill down to all the way down to the mitochondria and see early changes, hypertrophy in the mitochondria, and how you can use a certain antifungal compound, how it works with the steroid receptors, etc. And you can see the biology. And I've shown you the work of late Professor Ojha from Pune and his insights on how you can bring these two things together of modern biology and Ayurvedic thinking in complex areas like Avarana, and how you can actually see how these two things can help each other. It's a shame that we have lost Dr. Ojha, but fortunately some of his presentations are there on the website. I hope they will be kept alive for all of us to visit and study. And the concept of One Earth, One Health goes into the area of animal science. I hope I've given you those examples of Himalaya herbs, the 32 herbal formulation that's used routinely. I hope I've convinced you that there are people in Kerala, the one example I gave you of handling elephants with Ayurvedic principles, from Rajasthan, where Professor Ish comes on how horses are being handled using Ayurvedic approaches, and from 350 BC procedures. One Earth, One Health can be understood in so many levels, and I hope I've briefly introduced you to the way we can think about this and where are the opportunities and the kind of challenges. The challenges is that of the lack of understanding. Somebody sitting in Hungary might not fully appreciate all the fine details of Avarana and the language and the Sanskrit and the texts and how the principles are derived. And that is a challenge. The cultural nuances, when you go to a new land, you might not understand that culture and you might not be able to talk to them. And the question that came about Canada, fortunately, people in Canada speak English. There are umbrella organizations that will help you connect with those lands. You can open up discussions. There are many practitioners who have studied BAMS, MD in India and who are having good practice in Stockholm, for instance, in Toronto, in Sweden, Toronto in Canada. There are people there. And I gave you that example of Harish Vermaji, who is running a wonderful, helping a lot of people in complicated conditions like ulcerative colitis. So there it is. I hope, Lakshmi, I hope I've managed to give you a little insight into how we can start thinking about this need. The world is looking at this. We talked about Sweden looking for people. Ish Sharmaji briefly touched on somebody coming from the Ministry of Economic Affairs visiting Netherlands, visiting Mauritius, and looking at inviting people with skills, into this place. So there we are, Lakshmi. I am open to any more questions. If you are running out of time.
Yes, sir, we definitely are running out of time.
I will leave it with you. So thank you very much for having me. We'll come back again whenever you want, because there are.
Yes, sir, please. That will be a pleasure. We have, as I said, we are very fortunate that we got time to spend with you and to listen to you. And we are really looking forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you, sir, once again for such an elaborate session and for really enlightening us with your thoughts. Now, for vote of thanks, I request Dr. Ankush sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Swastha Rhythm of Ayurveda College, Coimbatore. Over to you, sir.
Am I audible, Srilashmi?
Yes, sir.
So good evening, one and all. Yes, it was really a pleasure hearing the words of Honorable Speaker Professor Madan sir. And it's such an honor for me to get the opportunity to thank you all the dignitaries on behalf of Ayurveda College Coimbatore and DIKSHA E-Learning under the banner of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. I would like to express my gratitude to all esteemed delegates of the webinar for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a great success. I extend my gratitude to Honorable Chief Speaker, Professor Madan sir, and I would also like to mention the special speaker, Dr. Sharma sir, from Mauritius, to take out their time during their busy schedule to raise the event with One Earth and One Health and One World concepts and order. Thank you for your inspiring and encouraging words, sir, on this special day. I must thank the organizing team, volunteers, for their hard work to make this webinar a successful one. And thank all the participants for their active participation. Thank you everyone once again for making it a grand success. And good night to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankush. Thank you, Lakshmi. We enjoyed that very much. And,
yes, sir, we did, definitely.
If I
Thank
can,
you, sir.
Before you log off, let me just copy the streaming link so that I can revisit. Thank you, Lakshmi. We look forward to meeting again.
Yes, sir, definitely.
Because there are many, many points, many questions that are in people's minds. And then
I'm sure we'll discuss more and we meet again, sir. Thank you, participants, for joining us today. And on this lovely evening, we got the time to spend with Professor Madan sir. Once again, thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable time with us. And wish you all have a great evening ahead. Thank you all. Good night. Good night, sir.
Good night.
Thank you and good night.